The material and information contained within the Chatting with Cumberland podcast is for general information purposes only. You should not rely upon the material or information on the website as a basis for making any business, legal, or other decisions. While we endeavor to keep the content and resources of Chatting with Cumberland current and accurate, the Cumberland Board of County Commissioners, Administration, and all departments and affiliates make no representations or warranties of any kind, express or implied, about the completeness, accuracy, reliability, suitability, or availability with respect to services, show content, and guest opinions contained on the Chatting with Cumberland for any purpose. The views and opinions expressed on the show are not representative of that of county commissioners, administration, or employees unless expressly specified. The Chatting with Cumberland podcast will be discussing sensitive topics such as suicide, sexual abuse, drug use, mental health, and domestic violence. Viewer discretion is advised. Hi, everybody. This is Chatting with Cumberland. Melissa Niles?
Yes.
Welcome to Chatting with Cumberland.
Thank you.
So, we wanted to have you on our inaugural episode and tell us a little bit about the origin stories about Chatting with Cumberland and the Department of Human Services and your role within there for the County of Cumberland.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you for having me on the show. My name is Melissa Niles. I'm the department head for Cumberland County Department of Human Services. Under that department, we have several divisions. We have mental health and addiction services. We have recovery support services. We have homeless services, youth services, human services, the Municipal Alliances for Drug and Alcohol Prevention, First Step Clinic, which is an outpatient program for people with substance use disorders. We serve ages 12 and up, regardless of ability to pay, for Cumberland County residents. We have Recovery on Wheels, which is our mobile unit that helps people access treatment in real time. And it also provides other resources on the spot for people who've been affected by substance use. And our newest addition is Capital Recovery Center, which is located at 72 North Pearl Street, which is right downtown, and it's anchored in the heart of the community. And our mission is to serve and help people build their recovery capital. And recovery capital are the internal and external resources that an individual has that they can mobilize to help them prevent themselves from going back to using drugs and alcohol, and to help sustain recovery and maintain it. And I'm very happy to be here and chatting with Cumberland. And Frank is the YSAC coordinator in that division in my department. And right from day one, when you joined us last year, I think you're coming up on your year anniversary.
I am in November.
Yes.
Wow.
You've been a joy to have, a delight. You're very creative. You're very passionate. And one of the unique things about Frank is that you are creative and you're also detail-oriented.
Thank you, Melissa.
So I appreciate that.
I appreciate you as well.
And I appreciate your creative ideas and your enthusiasm, because this Chatting with Cumberland is your baby. So I'm here to support, because we are all about the community.
Absolutely.
And trying to reach the community in many different ways that we can. So we're here to serve.
That's it. And just for those listening out there, a little origin. Melissa Niles was one of the few people outside of our committee that I pitched this idea to when we kind of came up with it and talked about it, to serve our community and connect more with our community. And from day one, she's been a believer in this project and a huge supporter. So thank you, Melissa, for doing that and believing in us and believing in your team and doing some of the great work that you do. I know you yourself have an amazing story in terms of how you landed where you landed in the Department of Human Services, and hopefully one day we'll get to share that.
Right. For the audience out there, that's just a little bit of foreshadowing. Frank has been after me to tell my story because I'm a person in long-term recovery.
That's right.
So I told him, I'm thinking about it. We'll see. So stay tuned.
I hope so.
Tune in every time we air.
Out.
I just might be telling my story.
We would love to have you here to bless the mic here and what we're doing, because this, as you said, stories are impactful and people can relate with them. And our secrets keep us sick. You know, once we start sharing our story, it inspires others to do the same and get the resources and help that they need to improve their quality of life and their living. So we really look forward to having you then. And in the meantime, we'll get back to you.
Thank you.
So, Melissa, with Chatting with Cumberland, Season 1, the Keeping It Real sessions, we're covering a variety of topics such as domestic violence. We're doing suicide, substance use. Today's episode is about suicide. And if you could tell us a little bit what Department of Human Services has lined up with relation to that, it'd be great.
Sure. So Ashley Huff, who works in our department, she is amazing. She is the Municipal Alliance Coordinator, and she's also my confidential assistant. But she is like my right hand, and she had taken on a few years back, I think it's 5 years now. It began with, she was participating just as a member on the Out of the Darkness Suicide Prevention Walk. And Ashley's a doer, so she just became more and more involved. And for the past 4 years, and I believe that this is our 5th year that we're going to be doing it, she has been in charge of the coordination for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Out of the Darkness Suicide Awareness Community Walks. So this year it's going to look a little different because it's virtual, but however, the mission to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide, it has not changed. So we are a strong and resilient community, and we are united in our efforts to fight suicide, to raise awareness, to educate our communities, and to support those who have lost their loved ones. And we also support those with lived experience. So we use our voices to share our stories to provide hope. So we invite everyone to please join us virtually on Sunday, November 1st, 2020, for our first statewide New Jersey Out of the Darkness experience. We're in the process of planning a special virtual event where we will come together to remember loved ones lost to suicide and embrace those with lived experience and honor the efforts of so many who work together to stop suicide. So if you're interested in registering for the virtual event, the link is afsp.org/Cumberland County, all one word. And I'm sure that they'll put that up on the screen or in the chat. So even though our plans are not finalized, we will be, different teams will be forming, and different teams will be walking at different places, and each team can choose wherever they want to walk. So Human Services, we will be walking together because we're good at that, right?
Yeah.
And people are more than welcome to join our team. But the first step would be to register on that link, and we will see you there. Please help us join the raising awareness and helping support those and help prevent suicide.
Yeah, and shout out to Ashley Huff. She does such a great job putting together the walk with AFSP every year. I even attended as a employee, as a non-county employee first, and we got a great experience. It's super kid friendly, and some passionate stories are told. They do some events every year, but it's a little different this year with the pandemic. But if you have any questions for Melissa, myself, for Miss Beth Thomas, or our guest today, Laura Eilenberg, please feel free to email your question to chattingwithcumberland@gmail.com, or you can enroll in our anonymous chatting with our anonymous Discord server at Chatting with Cumberland Podcast. And we're also on YouTube, so please drop us a like and a subscription to keep up to date so you can see it first. And thank you, Melissa, for joining us today and blessing our first episode.
You're welcome. Can we say the motto?
Tune in.
Turn up.
Turn up. Get
lifted.
Hi, everybody. This is Chatting with Cumberland. So welcome, everyone, back for our first short-form episode that we're doing today on Chatting with Cumberland. I'm Frank Carrozza, the Youth Services Administrator and podcast creator. This is my co-host.
Hi, I'm Beth Thomas, Special Child Health.
And this is our special guest in the hot seat today, Miss Lauren Eilenberg.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Lauren.
Welcome. So we have an exciting episode today. I just wanted to fill you in on some of the recent developments in terms of what we're doing with the podcast format for the County of Cumberland. We're going to be shooting 6 short-form episodes that are chock full of resources, and we're going to try to get 2 special guests, 1 or 2 for each episode, to help speak a little bit further on the topic. And those guests will additionally giving you resources. They're also going to shoot an episode with their testimony, and we're going to do a long-form video and put that in the link in description for you all in case you want to learn more about our guests or you are interested in a particular topic. You'll get to hear their story, and that's what Chatting with Cumberland is all about, the story. So today we have Lauren. So how's it going?
It's going. It's going.
Are you excited?
Yes, I am.
Very good.
I am a little nervous. First time doing this type of thing, but I'm excited.
Totally normal.
Mine too.
Totally normal. We got a great story today on the topic of suicide. And as we were discussing this earlier, just getting some ideas for our show and what the listeners may want to hear or what they need to hear, Lauren was very kind to come in and share some of her story that's pretty deep. And we hope that you enjoy it. So Lauren, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to know Chatting with Cumberland and what brings you in? Okay.
So I'm a longtime resident of Cumberland County. I was born and raised in Millville, New Jersey. So Millville. My journey with mental health and suicide, I mean, it is a long one. I first started to struggle when I was 10 years old. And back then, there weren't many resources. So it was kind of like, hey, just hold out a little longer, it'll get better. And then in 2018, I started the real treatment. And then I just prayed to God and in that treatment, use me, help me tell my story, give me the strength. And then doors just kind of started opening. And it's something that we need to talk about. It's something that needs to be said, so then people know that they can come forward, that you're not alone. Don't believe that lie. Depression, anxiety, and different disorders, it lies to you and it says that you're alone and that there's nobody out there, when that couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, thank you. We certainly look forward to hearing some more in-depth stuff about it. What I wanted to do for the viewers was introduce a clip from our very first episode with our guest Jaobi. And this was a segment of his experience with suicide that we're going to play for Lauren and get her reaction as we come back, and then give you a few resources that you can take home with you that hopefully help in case you find yourself in a similar situation or can relate with any of the topics. So, Beth, why don't we go ahead and play that tape, and
Sounds good.
We'll get Lauren's reaction. How's that sound?
I like
it.
it.
Right on. We'll see you in a few. Enjoy.
I met my first girlfriend when I was 17. She was 10 years my senior, had some heavy-duty mental health issues. And I would find the extent of this very soon after she committed suicide. An event that scarred me for life and deepened my pain avoidance. I drank heavily, I did drugs, I did everything I could. I self-mutilated. Any pain was better than the pain I was feeling.
And what type of release did you get from self-mutilation? What does that feel like?
Physical pain is much easier to deal with than emotional pain. It sounds like a cliche, but it's true. If you can only focus on one thing at a time, then focusing on how your body hurts makes you feel better than how your heart hurts.
As I understand, too, after experiencing that first suicide, there were times when you may have committed, attempt to commit suicide yourself. Am I right?
That's correct. I can't count the number of failed attempts I've had. My body is littered with scars from self-mutilation, fleeting memories of nights I tried to die. I was institutionalized 3 times in a psychiatric hospital. Throughout my life, there were many such attempts, and I have the great luck to be here today with a drastically different story to tell than when I started.
So, Lauren, you just saw our clip from a previous episode that was aired. Can you tell me what your thoughts and feelings are about that?
The first thing that came to my mind was wow. And it even though it's something so painful for him, it resonates so deeply with me. I understand where the physical versus the emotional pain comes from. I totally get it. There were times where when I was younger, you'd stub your toe or you'd get a paper cut or something, and most people would be like, oh my gosh, let me go get this fixed. I'm having, issues. But for me, I would always stop and in a twisted way, savor that physical pain, because it made me realize that I was still alive, and it allowed me to feel something different than the emotional pain that I felt at the time. So it almost like it gave me an outlet to escape temporarily that physical pain that I was feeling. So for me, it resonates deeply.
Yeah. Where would you say the physical pain began to manifest? Like, where does it originate?
That's kind of tough. I know that I guess in a weird way to explain it, my relationship with physical pain changed. You know, when you're a child and, you know, everything's hunky dory, you know, you go to mom with anything, you know, I had paper cuts or I scraped my knee and it's made better. But for me, I started to revel in physical pain and not necessarily welcome it, but not be so eager to get rid of it when it did happen, because it was a distraction to what I was feeling every day.
What were you feeling every day, Lauren?
The typical responses, you know, the hopelessness, the sadness, the worthlessness, just no hope whatsoever, and you can get lost in the negativity that you feel, and you can sometimes be so overwhelmed with the negativity that you're incapable of stepping out of it and seeing the bigger picture. You get this tunnel vision, and then after a while, I know for me, the pain of different things that I was experiencing, that I dealt with, that I was feeling, it almost, you hold on to it after a while because it becomes so familiar. You don't know who you are without it. So I kind of was almost afraid after a certain point of what I would be like without the mental health issues that I was having.
Do you think that fear may be a reason why people don't reach out to get help?
I think fear plays a big part, and I think it comes from many directions. It's a fear of the unknown, of what am I getting ready to face? Who am I without that? I know that was one thing that I struggled with, but then it's also the stigma and the judgment that surrounds mental health that people deal with so often. It's hard because you kind of step back and you say, well, if I come out and talk about this, or if I go to the wrong person with this could blow up in my face. Right. This could backfire. And what do I do then? So I think the fear has a lot to do with it, because there isn't an acceptance around mental health. The conversations aren't being had. And it's just the stigma, you know, where, she has depression, she has anxiety, she has PTSD, she's crazy. You know, it's almost like people have this thought that you have a mental health issue, that it warps reality for you, that it changes everything. And that's not the case at all.
Now, my experience with you, Lauren, I just want to give the readers and fans and viewers some context. I had the opportunity to get to hear some of your speech last year at the Out of the Darkness Suicide Walk.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we were late for that event, and I didn't get to hear the whole thing. I'm glad that you're here to tell it in person now. But I've heard a lot of great things about you in terms of just sharing your story. And what is your personal relationship to suicide, and what advice would you give somebody who may be feeling certain similar things that you feel would be helpful to them?
My personal relationship with it is having a life full of suicide ideation and the almost dream, the fantasy dream of being able to die. And it sounds horrible, and from somebody on the outside that may not be suffering from anything, it may be really hard to understand. But at the same time, it's like it kind of, I guess, gives perspective to someone who isn't familiar with it, just how bad it can be when you suffer from something. Because I was willing to give up everything. I was willing to die to not feel what I felt. You know, I was willing to just walk away and say, okay, you know, I'm done. But that's where everything kind of changed when I went into treatment. And then I realized that if I do talk about this, if I do share my story, it may help somebody else realize that they're not by themselves, they're not alone. And I think that people need to hear what it is like from somebody who went through it. And also, so I can stand here and I can look at the camera, talk to you guys, go to an event, give a speech, and say, you can get through it because I'm living proof that you can. And that, you know, other people who you'll have on the show or across the world over, we can show that you can get through it. It's, you know, just like where you said the other day, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, but there are ways to overcome it and be better and stay alive and get healthy.
Right. Yeah, Lauren, I'm really excited to hear your story today, especially since that in my time in this work, and maybe Beth, you can, you know, chime in and tell us about it, but I haven't had a lot of experience with folks either having suicide in their family or having an incident that they experience themselves. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspective and maybe learning something as a professional.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Same.
So one of the things that I wanted to cover was the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Yeah.
What is your relationship with them?
They're amazing. So how I came into the fold with the foundation was in my treatment, you know, praying for God to use me. And I, you know, said a prayer and said, in an odd way, like, this will be worth it if I can help other people. You know, not even just me being saved and being healthy, but it'll give me a purpose. It'll give my pain a purpose. So I had prayed and said, God, use me. And a week later, the foundation called me, which was crazy. I had filled out an application to be a volunteer and didn't expect anything back because I had never done anything like that before. And a week later, Elizabeth, the state director, gave me a call, and she was like, you know, I normally don't call people for applications, but I just had this gut feeling I needed to call you. And I just like looked up very slowly and was like, okay, that's an answered prayer. And once I got started with the foundation and started talking and saying, yes, I'm willing to talk about this. I'm comfortable, even though it's uncomfortable, I'm comfortable. Doors just opened. And the foundation, I became a volunteer. I started tabling events. And I also worked with a coworker who does a lot of community outreach. And he was like, hey, I know that you're doing this. Why don't you join me on my community outreach events? And he would allow me, you know, the space to set up a table and talk to people, just talk, you know. And I went to New Jersey Pride with the foundation, and that was great, and just got to talk to people. And it's scary because I'm an introvert. I'm not a super social person. But the one thing I think back to with this is Moses in the Bible, where he literally is saying, you should pick somebody else. Like, I'm not good at talking. Like, what are you doing? And God's just like, do it anyway, you know, paraphrasing. And look what Moses accomplished, you know? So it's like, it's kind of like, okay, well, if he can do his gig, like his gig was huge, then I can do my little bit, and just to change the world. And it starts in the home base. It starts in our hometowns, and it'll just trickle outwards. Do
you hear stories like when you're on the road and doing tabling events that people share with you that you find, you know?
You usually find me crying, hugging somebody, because it's, for me, it's the empathy aspect and being an empath. And I think too, also what it is I've looked at sadness and pain and discomfort on my own face for so long that I instantly recognize it on somebody else's. So sometimes I'll just get a gut feeling that I need to go talk to somebody, and I do. And before I know it, it's just this huge moment of growth for both of us, you know. Just, and I give that to God, you know, like, you're giving me this path to walk down, and who am I to say no?
Yeah.
You know? Sure.
You know, that same path brought Lauren to the Cumberland County Out of the Darkness Suicide Prevention Walk, where we first met.
So Now, do you plan to do the next one? What are they doing this year for the Out of the Darkness one?
So things are a little bit different this year
Mm-hmm.
because of the pandemic. So
Sure.
they were doing it virtual. I haven't been as active as I have been in the past 2 years because I have a lot going on personally. And sometimes, as guilty as I may feel, I take a step back and, give myself a breather, and then I come back in full bore because you can't pour from an empty cup, and sometimes my cup gets a little too empty, and then I have to kind of take a moment and step back. But the planning committee is they're putting in the work, and they're doing really great stuff, and they're adapting, and it amazes me. Like, I just am in awe every time I hear of this idea or what this is being done. And being able to still support the community and do it virtually is huge, especially with the pandemic. A lot of people are, out of work, and, moms used to go to work, and now they're working from home and making breakfast, lunch, and dinner and teaching their kids, and dads are, doing this, that, and the other. And it's just a lot of people were kind of like thrown into a basket, shuffled around, and then tossed back out into the world. And we're all kind of trying to make the best with what we have. And that's the issue too with societal issues that are happening right now. It's relative. When the stress of society increases, so does the mental health concerns.
Sure.
So, and I think that's why this is more important than ever. Still being out there is more important than ever. And if we can't be out there physically, well, we'll be out there virtually.
Yeah.
So then you can safely still hear the message. You can still get the support that you need, but not face to face.
Sure. So what, for the person that may be struggling with suicide in some way or another, like, whether it's ideation or, any type of ugly kind of facet surrounding that, because I know it can happen and, take you to some dark places sometimes. What would you recommend as the first step?
The first step is honestly talking to somebody. I mean, we all have a friend. We have, and honestly, again, with the pandemic, things are harder, but, if you have a church official that you can go to, or a softball coach, or a teacher that you were close with, we're still able to communicate even if we can't do it face to face. And that's the one thing that does frustrate me, and it's something I personally have struggled with in a technology-driven society where we have all these apps and all of these social media platforms. Despite having such a strong ability to talk, it's like it's still extremely lonely. And that's just it with Facebook and Instagram and all this stuff that we have. You should be able to reach anybody that you need to, if you have a friend or anybody, just talk and just say what you need to say. And I mean, yes, it's the scariest thing ever, but it helps relieve like a pressure cooker. It just helps let out a little bit of that steam to kind of take the edge off. And then that you can work with that person to get help.
Sure. And one thing that kind of stood out, you had mentioned back in 2018, you hit a bit of a tipping point, right? And you had some help and kind of, you reached out to a friend, right? Yep. Can you tell us about it? How'd it go?
It was the scariest moment of my life because I unfortunately had reached out to people in the past, and I reached out to the wrong people. Instead of getting help and having that person kind of stick with me when I needed it, they would just say, oh, like, you'll be okay, it's going to pass. And then they would move you on. And then I was still fighting it, but I was doing it alone. And then it kind of set me up to think, well, this is what happens when you come forward. They get spooked and they run away. And it's like, but I'm still here with it. Like, it didn't go away when you ran off, So I went to a supervisor who I trusted, and he had fostered a work relationship that was very open in communication and open door policy and whatnot. And I went to him January 11th, 2018. I'll never forget the date. And I just said, hey, do you have time to talk? I need to have a chat. And he goes, yeah, I'll be at your office in a few minutes. And he came to my office, shut the door, and 2.5 hours later, I had spilled everything I was struggling with. He listened. He asked questions when he felt it was appropriate. And he asked me one very simple question was, can you go home and promise me that you won't hurt yourself and look me in the eye when you say it? And I could say it but not make eye contact. And he said, please let me take you to the hospital. Let me get you help. And it was, the way that he worded it was amazing too, because he just said, you know, we can do it. We can do this. And it just, the way that he worded it, I didn't feel alone when he said it that way. And then the one thing that he said to me that resonated that I'll never forget is, and I was grabbing my jacket and my purse and getting ready to walk out the door. And he said, you know, Lauren, our character isn't defined in how we fall. And I turned and looked at him and I said, it's in the rise. And he nodded and he said, it's in the rise. And, you know, they all came, the supervisors, my parents were called, and I was taken to the emergency room. You know, walked into the waiting room and you know, my supervisor said, I have someone here for crisis. And I was taken back and I was, you know, matched up with a health professional, and I answered questions and they asked me questions, you know, just a general conversation. And that started the process, you know, and it's different for every person. It depends on how much you're struggling. I was struggling. I kind of got bombarded with a bunch of stuff, but I knew I didn't want to die. I knew I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. And so I was put in a weekly treatment program, and I traveled up to Glassboro for mine through Inspira, so I could get in quicker because, you know, the local offices were a little bit booked, and I was like, I don't really want to wait. I want to get in. I want to get started. So I traveled up to Glassboro for my therapy, and I went every week, Wednesday at 9 a.m. for a year and a half.
Yeah, we'd love to hear more about that experience and what that entailed and what that felt like. So can't wait to get into that. So we want to take this moment of the episode to introduce our video box. If you email your video or question to chattingwithcumberland@gmail.com, we'll have our producers review it and submit it onto our show to ask our guest. Or if you have information as a system partner to share with us, please send us your video, and we'll be glad to look it over for you and put it on the podcast. So a very special thank you today to Miss Michelle Vorpal of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, who sent us our first video box. And we're going to take a minute and air that for you all right now.
Hi, my name is Michelle Vorpal, and I am the Associate Area Director for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, New Jersey chapter. Thank you, Frank, for inviting me here today. I am excited to be joining you from the Chatting with Cumberland video box. Thank you for tuning into today's Chatting with Cumberland podcast. It is so important to have conversations surrounding mental health and suicide prevention. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. In 2018, 48,344 Americans died by suicide, and there were an estimated 1.4 million attempts. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's mission is to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide. AFSP creates a culture that's smart about mental health by funding scientific research, educating the public about mental health and suicide prevention, advocating for public policies and suicide prevention, and supporting survivors of suicide loss and those affected by suicide. We know this has been a time of uncertainty in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, and taking care of our mental health is more important than ever. Please know that the AFSP New Jersey chapter is here for you, your loved ones, colleagues, and your local community. We have many resources available and are currently offering virtual programming. Some of our upcoming programs include Talk Saves Lives, an introduction to suicide prevention on October 29th at 7 o'clock, a research connection on November 3rd at 2 p.m., Talk Saves Lives, an introduction to suicide prevention for firearms owners on November 17th at 7 p.m., and our International Survivors for Suicide Lost Day, which will be held as a statewide New Jersey virtual event this year on November 21st at 10 a.m. To view these programs and more, please visit our website at afsp.org/New Jersey. There you will also find resources and learn more on how you can be involved. You can find the link to this website and also other helpful resource links posted in the notes in the description of this episode. As a reminder, if you or a loved one is in crisis, please contact the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or contact the crisis text line by texting TALK to 741-741. They are both available 24/7. Thank you again for joining us today, and thank you for having me.
So Frank and Lauren, some of the resources that are available in Cumberland County would include the Crisis Center, which is connected to Inspira, as Lauren had mentioned earlier. We also have school-based youth services in some of the high schools in the area. We have the PerformCare program for children up to the age of 21. And we also have a lot of mental health resources in the community, which can be available through our local kayak.
Thank you, Beth. We're going to make sure that we put those in the comments so people can access them directly. And one of the major important phone numbers to dial is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. That number is 1-800-273-8255 in case you or a loved one needs some help dealing with suicide or anything for that matter. You can call them 24 hours a day and someone will be there to pick up the phone. Once again, that number is 1-800-273-8255. And Lauren, I'd like to thank you for being on the show today.
Of course.
Thank
We
you,
really
Lauren.
look forward to the interview
thank
that we're going to
you.
be shooting next that goes a little bit deeper into your story.
Yes, sir.
And we hope that this episode is helpful. And we look forward to checking you out on the next one. We're covering domestic violence with prosecutor Jennifer Webb McCrae and the good folks from SERVE. And a big thank you to Michelle Vorpal of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention for submitting our very first video to our video box. We look forward to seeing you all next week, and tune in, turn up, get lifted.